My name is Randall Shiestl. I work for Boston Scientific, Global Technology, Vice President, R&D. Today we've got a special event. One of my heroes, Heidi Dohse, is here with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about her journey. Heidi is a very special friend. She's one of my heroes. She is 100% pacemaker dependent, and she lives a full life. She's a world-class cyclist. She's she teaches us more than we teach her. We learn from her more than she learns from us. Heidi is a special person. I'm going to keep my introduction very short because I do want to leave time at the end for Q&A. When you hear Heidi's story and you hear where she's been, what she's done, and what she's doing today, it will generate a lot of questions. So Heidi, before you start your slides, just tell us a little bit about what you do at Google today.
Well, first I want to ask if the best part of me is made here in Minnesota. Does that make me an unofficial Minnesotan? So thanks to Boston Scientific, I am 100% pacemaker dependent and have been product testing for them for almost a little over 30 years. Today is one of those days that is really kind of a dream come true for me, where my personal journey and my professional life collide. I work for Google. I'm in the Google Healthcare Cloud organization, and I work with our strategic partnerships to finally figure out how we bring transformation and digital enablement to healthcare. So that's a little bit about what I do.
And Heidi has a great story. She has some great slides to go with it, so we'll move right into the presentation.
All right. So I grew up as one of those kids in Southern California. I was a competitive swimmer, soccer player, ran track, ended up being a competitive skier and a World Cup professional windsurfer. But it turns out that whole time, when all of you kids are in PE and they tell you to count your heart rate for 20 seconds to come up with a number, I couldn't figure out how to do that. I had no idea how to take my pulse. And somewhere we'll get more slides. Slide person. There we go. I couldn't figure it out. No one ever told me that your pulse was supposed to beat like regularly. I had no idea. I'm just like, okay, whatever. When I was 18 years old, I went in for knee surgery. They were going to go in and do a procedure and kind of clean up the mess I'd been making between windsurfing and skiing and all this other great stuff. While I was there, I had my first EKG. And as the paper was spitting out of the machine, we learned that 270 beats per minute is not normal. Who knew? So in that moment, I went from an 18-year-old athlete to transferred to the coronary care unit, where I spent the next 30 days at UCSF while they tried all kinds of drug therapies, tried to figure out like what the heck was wrong, where did this happen, why did it happen, what can we do next? And ultimately they said, you know, we don't know why you lived as long as you did, and we're not sure how much longer you'll be around. So I did what every 18-year-old would do. I quit school, college, and moved to Maui to windsurf, because if you're not going to live long, you may as well live well. And then the following year, I was invited to participate in an experimental procedure. I was one of Dr. Mel Scheinman's first AV ablations back in 1983. They ablated my AV node, rewired me, and I became 100% pacemaker dependent. So here I am now, a 19-year-old, and it's like, all right, how am I going to feel with this thing? I'd never seen one in anybody, and truly the messaging around implanted devices is not 19-year-old athlete, it's older person who's, you know, not doing much. So what's it going to look like in my chest? And most important, as a professional windsurfer with a swimsuit sponsor, am I ever going to wear a swimsuit again? So I did, and I proceeded to spend the next long time, that's my chest, that's my pacemaker, It's my wiring. At the time that this was taken, I'd had 6 pacemakers. So that's awesome. Every time you get a new pacemaker, you get new heartbeats, and those new heartbeats get smoother, they get better, and I can do more things with them. The downside is that you end up with scar tissue, and you end up with the unintended consequences of being on the cutting edge of technology. So when my leads needed to be replaced, there was some tugging, there was some yanking, there was some infection that sort of led to a cardiomyopathy, some heart failure, and then some blockages. And as you can see, that your blood's supposed to go through a single path, and mine had started building up all these other little things, and it turns out that I ended up with some heart failure, and we needed to go in and fix this with some open heart surgery. So here I am again, getting this call from the doctor, and this is when I finally had to fess up to being a heart patient. So here I'd been, I'm on my 6th pacemaker, but I never thought of myself as a victim of heart disease. I was just a girl with a bad electrical system, and we fixed it. So now I'm going to go in, and how do you prepare for having your chest cut open and people mucking around, and then what kind of a life do you want when you come out? So I decided I needed a goal, and I wanted to go back to being, decided to be a competitive cyclist. So I picked out a bike race. The Loader Jaw Classic happens to be a 200-mile single-day bike race that starts in Logan, Utah, and ends in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So I thought that was a good goal. The other thing I did is I went and had glamour shots done. Because if you're going to saw open your chest, it's like, all right, let's go document what it looked like beforehand. Now notice they also airbrushed the other pacemaker scars out. So I highly recommend this. Yeah, I mean, now I just wish that, how do we wear like the little face mask? But this is always, as a patient, this is the scariest moment of a surgery. It's when they're putting that first IV in. Because once they put this in, you're stuck. You're part of their system. You can't escape. And, it's really sort of who you are after this is somebody different than when you started. This is sort of what, if you look, you can see pacemaker number 7 and twisty ties that now hold my chest together. And everything was going so well after the surgery. I kind of came out, got you get a heart pillow whenever you go in for open heart surgery. They give you this pillow that you're supposed to hold on to. But what happened is it turns out that day 3, they started the blood thinners, and then there was some leaking, and then I sort of bled out. And then we kind of did some emergency surgery to, kind of try and make it through the night. So that was day 1 of training for my bike race. This was back in ICU. Notice this, now you see why I documented the glamour with the glamour shots, because now I have some expensive body art. But this was the day in day in ICU where I kind of had to start training, and this was my training program, because as long as I had a goal to get back to being an athlete, I didn't have to be a victim, and I didn't have to just stop at being a heart patient. So I started walking laps in the hospital. I was there for about 3 weeks with the unintended consequences. And I had a little training, lap counter on my whiteboard in my room, and started doing laps. Then I did my first 4-minute workout on the spin bike when I got out of the hospital. And normally we won't even set our coffee cup down and put shoes on for a 4-minute workout. I was exhausted and terrified. I got to where I did, the 4 minutes turned into 10 minutes, and that got me to 20 minutes, and I got back on my bike again, and I started on my mountain bike because I would ride on dirt, and I figured that way if I passed out, cars wouldn't run over me. That was my logic. It was like, not that I shouldn't get on the bike, it's like I should ride where cars won't smush me. So then I did my first little 10-mile ride, and then I did finish, 5 months after my open heart surgery, I crossed the finish line of I did a 50-mile leg for the Loader Jaw Classic. And on my 1-year anniversary of my heart surgery, I did my first century ride. And at 18 months, I completed the entire 200 miles solo. So when I crossed that finish line, I wasn't broken anymore. That's when I knew that I was a long way from being a victim, and this was a way for me to go back to who I wanted to be and not who I might have been. Since then, I've been racing bikes all over the world, and I've had I call it product testing for Boston Scientific. And yeah, their name is on my jerseys. But it's been fantastic to be able to go and ride and be on the podium and reach the goals that were important to me. So how did I get there? You know, it's like people ask me all the time, how do you get from that hospital bed, and then how do you get back on your bike, and how do you go, not do a little bit, but do a lot? First, I had to learn to trust. And this is something that oftentimes device manufacturers and the healthcare system doesn't quite understand, that just because you put it in my chest and you have done a lot of testing doesn't mean that I'm going to automatically trust that the device is going to do what it's supposed to do every minute, every day, for every single heartbeat. I have great tools that allow me to have the data and the information to help me to build that trust, to help me, you know, that's the pacemaker connected to the latitude communicator. It's passively interrogating, you know, that way I know if something were happening, somebody out there is going to know that something's going on and be alerted, so I don't have to sit there and count every heartbeat anymore. Because I've been on this journey for so long, I'm also really interested in my performance data. I've gotten over the trusting and is it working, and now I'm much more interested in the how do I get to the finish line faster. So, you know, my Garmin, you know, activity / everything device. And one of the best days for me was being in the human performance lab, getting, you know, having my VO2 max and my lactate threshold, power, and my pacemaker tech rep optimizing my device to be able to get the performance I want out of my pacemaker to do what I want it to do. The important thing is, back to that trust and having this information, having this data, is there was a time many years ago that I spent 18 months where I didn't really leave the house because I counted every heartbeat before we had access to wearable devices and things like that. It's like, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? You know, now I don't need to do that. And I have the tools to know that I'm safe, and when I'm safe, I'm more confident. When I'm more confident, I do more. And I've rewired my brain to default to safe and confident and doing more versus fear, anxiety, and panic attacks. Because if anybody's had a panic attack, you do feel like you're dying, and that means you get to go to the hospital and consume a whole bunch of extra health care. And no one tells it was a panic attack. They say, we're not seeing anything right now. Go home and just keep an eye on it. Is it working? Is it working? Is it, you know, so that becomes your life. Some of the interesting, you know, we talked about where is digital health going. Patients have a lot of information nowadays. We have the information that we generate ourselves from our activity trackers and sensors that we wear or that are in our homes. But like, this is my device data. So this is what's captured from my communicator. Somewhere. If I point it in the right direction, will it?
There you go.
So genomes. People can go and get their genome sequenced. So everyone's now going and you know, not just the, oh, okay, well that was fast, huh? Whoa. Oh, someone else has control. There we go. So genome data. You know, we get our genomes, but then it says, all right, a lot's been happening, and I have 175 variants that are just specific to cardiovascular. We know I'm broken. Can we find out why I broke? And can we then, you know, can I donate this data to make it of use to someone else? Which gets to Hipaa. We all talk about Hipaa. Hipaa's this thing that most patients, every time you go to the doctor, you're told if anyone sees your medical data, your world is going to come crumbling down and bad things will happen. So you sign it and you go home, you post your appointment on Facebook. I think we need to reset people's expectation of, medical data, how it's used, what it's used for, because personally, the length of and quality of my life is dependent on innovation. So I'm happy to make my data and my information available. I would like to be able to donate it. Just let me be valued for my contribution. And I'd like to have some way of saying, what can it be, what it's used for. So then, of course, we have my day job, and this is what I get to focus on. Current state of healthcare. Like, it's getting really exciting. A few years ago, it was like we had our legacy system of all data and all information will live in a walled garden on-prem at some provider system. Not today. Now, of course, I have 6 electronic health portals I can log into, and none of them talk to one another. But at least we have the potential for data interoperability. But we're going to meet in the middle, because the really interesting data is being generated at the patient, in our environments, in the context of living our day. And that's going to be the data that, even if it's not medical grade, as long as it's consistent, so that when there's an anomaly, that anomaly can be a starting point to then begin to do some testing. Because right now, we basically go to the doctor with a feeling. I felt really lightheaded, and doctors said it's because I wasn't getting enough salt in my diet. That, of course, turned out not to be true. But treating feelings is hard, and it takes time to treat feelings. So this, I came across this recently on some of the trends and e-trends in healthcare right now. And this slide could have been built for me. The big areas are fitness wearables and heart failure data or wearables. And I was like, yeah, those are both my favorites. But this is kind of where the acceptance and growth is in e-health. Again, this is kind of just, the fitness, telemedicine, and smart devices. It's finally becoming a thing. And Randy knows that I've been talking about, wearables and e-health for a long time. And finally, even Google, when I first started getting to know everybody at the company, when I joined about 6 years ago, healthcare wasn't really on their radar. And I'm like, no, it's important, I swear, I promise. And now it really is. And the fitness products, are continuing to grow. And you'll see companies like Fitbit and Garmin becoming more of a player in the wellness, not going so far as to become medical grade yet, but I think we're going to start getting there. It's always interesting to see what's driving people to adopt wearables, and how do we, because everyone wants to know, how do we better engage with our patients? Patients really, they want to improve their health, and they want access to information that will help them make better decisions. And we've always only had that choice, or we only get that information if we go to the most expensive place to get answers, and that's our doctor, the clinic, or the hospital. Now we can start to have answers at home, on our wrist, on our body, and things like that. So, that's really going to start to change people's accountability for improving their own health. Google really is getting into healthcare. Yeah. We have, it took us a little longer than some of the other cloud providers to get into healthcare, but we really do have some of the smartest people in the world that are able to, my little clicker, okay. Especially when it comes to IoT in Google Cloud, but being able to ingest data from all kinds of data streams, into the data analytics engine. So the power of Google's a data company, and we actually are really good at organizing the world's data to make it useful. Well, now we can organize the world's medical data, not owned by us, and no advertising will be sold on your data. People do ask if that would happen, but no. But to start to use machine learning and artificial intelligence and give you the power to make those aha connections across different data sources. We have machine learning just out of the box. You can either customize models yourself if you've got enough data to start training models to ask good questions of your data. And then, of course, there's things that we have that are just right out of the box that you can start to use to start asking questions. We try and make it easy. And then we've got a partnership with Flex Digital Health. And Flex Digital Health on GCP allows you to more quickly connect your medical class 1, 2, and 3 devices in an FDA-approved environment that provides you the device connectivity, the patient capture, and being able to present it out. So we've got regulated apps. We can do the regulated medical devices, clinical trials support, and all of that. Instead of you having to build it yourself and go through the approval process, it's already done. You just need to connect your devices to the Flex platform, and then Flex is running on GCP. So the whole thing is safe, secure, and compliant. But really, for me, it's an amazing, exciting time. I've been on this journey for some 30-plus years. And we're really, all of the right pieces are available, the right people are in the room, and now we can really start to build the future of healthcare, and I think really change some people's lives.
You can see why Heidi is one of our favorite patients. She's got that unique, driven spirit, that really positive attitude. She talks about heartbeats and the quality of her heartbeat, and she can provide feedback on the quality of the heartbeat that she gets from the device. Mm-hmm. And Heidi talks about data, and her objective is not to personalize data or hide data or keep data internally, but to share data, to put the data out there, to help device companies, to help the industry, to help build better devices, to deliver better heartbeats, to allow better performance. It's all about performance. There's a goal there for Heidi that is self-motivated, unique to individuals that I've met, but one that really provides a lot of positive motivation to the employees at healthcare companies, motivation to the industry, motivation to those of us that get to know her well and really drive the quality of healthcare going forward. Heidi, I'm sure across your 30-plus years, there's been a few setbacks.
Oh, yeah.
How do you deal with a setback?
So, and they're just little training obstacles. It's kind of this, when I was talking about the trust, because when you start one of these journeys, it's not a one-time, when you break a leg, it's like your leg heals and then it's just, you kind of go on. I am forever attached to Boston Scientific. They're responsible for 100% of my heartbeats, so I love having this connection. But like I said, those unintended consequences, who knew that getting leads out of a body after 20 years was going to be so hard, and that tore things up, that created heart failure, and then the heart failure and the scar tissue, then that led to having to do some other things. So you're constantly having to go back to that place of, I want to be more than just a victim of this situation. I want to have a goal, and I want to have the desire to keep getting back to being healthy. I guess that's how I get over them.
What a great opportunity to have you working at Google as a patient, having real life experience with devices, knowing healthcare from many visits to the hospital, and really thinking about how Google can employ the talent at that company to the healthcare industry. That's a great opportunity.
And like I said, it took them a little longer, but now we have amazing teams across Google that are talking about how do we get connected devices, how do we help to create the interoperable health standards through HL7. Now we have the HL7 API available as one of the out-of-the-box tools on the healthcare platform on cloud. So, the idea of when I can get away from just 6 patient portals, now we can have 1 patient portal accessible to everyone. I get to share the why. So I'm very much a story of why is this important, and I get to work with really great people that are the how to get it built and done.
One thing when you get to know Heidi, she will share everything, positive and negative. So we'll open up for a few questions from the audience, and don't be timid. Be brave, ask some questions.
Actually, I'm going to start with one. So tell me a little bit about, you said you had lightheaded feelings, and then you reported those more than once, right, to physicians? So you finally only got them to listen when they had to check for your knee, right?
Right. So, you know, I was born with this arrhythmia. Turns out it was a really rare arrhythmia, so I had an opportunity to get written up in those medical journals. But, you know, when I was young, I was lightheaded, and the doctor said it wasn't enough salt in my diet. That's what they told my mom. And then when I was 13, 14, then they said it was hormones. And so it was when I was 18, and they had data, that data being the strip from the EKG, then it became actionable. And then it was like, wow, that's really actionable. We don't have a specific action for it, but yep, we should take action.
So clearly, had you not needed that knee surgery, you would no longer be with us. What did that teach you about advocating for yourself as a patient? And do you feel at all that your symptoms were not taken seriously, perhaps due to unconscious bias and things like that in the doctor community?
Yeah, you know, how often do we hear, you know, I started playing competitive sports when I was 6. I was a competitive swimmer. So, you know, not only was I kind of a younger female coming in to the doctor with lightheadedness, which is, could be many things, but I was also an active, child. So heart issues didn't even enter their minds. And what I never thought it was my heart either, because I could see it pounding in my chest. It's like, yep, heart's working. I could feel every heartbeat, and yep, they're racing. So I'm like, yeah, heart's working fine. No one had ever educated me that my heart was supposed to be just normal, easy to count. So it was this, we hear about active kids in high school and in college that just drop dead from heart issues all the time. We now have the tools to easily screen for some of those things. Just some, dreams of mine are, how do we put high school or college programs in place to just do the screenings to help catch the arrhythmias, because we are the kids that fall through the gaps. But the scariest part of getting a pacemaker put in after the ablation and they put the device in was that I no longer felt my heart. And that was terrifying.
You have other questions?
I just have a quick one from getting to the microphone. So on this standard exam, how would it not show up under a stethoscope? Like 270 beats a minute, that would be pretty obvious.
Yeah, so typically when they do the stethoscope, it's about 10 seconds. So my heart rate wasn't always like that every minute of the day. So I would just have a lot of episodes. So, but typically it's like nothing ever happens when you're at the doctor. I don't know, it's that and when you take your car in to get it fixed, but nothing ever happens when you're there. And like I said, the only place we ever collect data is in that very clinical environment. But the opportunities we have today to collect data with people in the context of their life, because I would have those episodes throughout the day, but if it didn't happen when I was in there, the only other time that it happened was when I went to get my wisdom teeth pulled. The dentist put me under and woke me back up, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome, it doesn't even hurt. And he's just white, and he's like, has anyone ever mentioned a heart problem to you? And I went over to the internist, and they said, nope, you're fine. Yeah. So I still have my wisdom teeth.
Great story. Amazing. 200 miles. Hey,
I've actually done it 5 times. I got my 1,000-mile wheel now.
Wow, 1,000 miles. You mentioned Hipaa and how it could be a scary thing and so on and so forth. And I myself personally don't care if everybody in this room looked at my medical record. I am what I am. But there are a lot of people who have concerns that their medical record could be used to discriminate against them, either via health insurance or employment or something like that. And have you ever thought about that, or anybody about what needs to be done legally to prevent that?
So, and that's a great question. And maybe 5, 10 years ago, that I would have said, it's a possibility that people would find out information about you that you wouldn't necessarily want in your employer's hands. But now that's the last place an employer looks. They're going to go search your social media. They're going to see what you put on Twitter. They're going to see what you put on Instagram and Facebook and everything else. Like, there is so much more that that you would probably not want your employer to have than perhaps what's in your medical records at this point. So I'm not really worried about that. And it's interesting when it comes to insurance. The only time that I was ever denied any insurance was when I was a full-time student going to university, and I needed to get my first pacemaker battery change. And I didn't have health insurance. It was the only time I've not had it. And when I tried to get help, through the state of Washington, I was told that I speak English and I wasn't pregnant, so there wasn't much they could do for me. I was living in Hood River, and I was, also working at a windsurfing shop where some doctors that knew me from San Francisco happened to come into Hood River. They asked how the pacemaker was working out, and I said, well, it's all well, except that the batteries are running out, and I'm not sure what to do. And it was that group of doctors that got together, and they replaced and Boston Scientific was part of that, but it was that group of doctors in the hospital in San Francisco that got together and replaced my first pacemaker. After that, I've never had any issues, even after all of my open heart surgeries, lung surgeries, and everything else. No insurance company has ever denied covering me. Only the government.
Some more questions? Heidi, what kind of, you talked about trusting the device. What kind of technology do you use that's sort of user-friendly in terms of apps or wearables? You said the Garment. Any other things?
So, again, at my device management tools, so I have the communicator that's keeping an eye on me, and I get that information. But the information that I most depend on, at this point in my journey right now, is being able to use my my Garmin connected to the Garmin Connect app and to Strava, because I don't know if there's anybody out here that has Strava for cycling or running, but if it's not on Strava, you don't get credit for the workout. What I love about some of these apps, and especially that one, is that at the end of the year they do a heat map of everywhere you've exercised, and you can kind of see just how much you accomplished over the year, where you were at, who you were with, what your performance was, and it's pretty impressive. You go, wow, I was capable of all of that. Where did I find the time? But it's just really, those are the things that are really helpful for a consumer. You hear lots of people that say, well, they only use their step counter for about the first 3 months, and after that they stop using it. Because you have to want the information. If you're using it just for steps, you're like, all right, I took steps, and my steps, I took a lot of steps each day for 3 months, and then you're sort of over whatever it can tell you. But when it can tell you information that helps you get to a goal that's important, then it becomes information that you want.
Hi, great story. I had a question about the Next-Generation Pacemaker from Boston Sci, and if you're excited about the possibility of the one that will be directly implanted in your ventricle, I believe.
Change is hard. No. So I have a dual chamber pacemaker, so I have atrium and ventricle. Am I excited?
Absolutely.
I'm excited, yes. No.
What Heidi is, she's really the best example of where we can get performance feedback from our devices.
Yeah.
So that really gives us new direction on where we can take the technology. It's a tremendous opportunity.
And that's, you know, kind of to what Randy's saying. It's like, I'm excited if it takes like the great things of, you know, minute ventilation and the sensors that tell that can more quickly determine whether I'm exercising or having a tachycardia. Because right now, the hardest thing is I'm at a race and the race starts on an uphill, and you're exerting, you know, essentially at red line from the beginning. It just assumes I'm having a tachycardia and doesn't give me the heartbeats that I want. But if I can, you know, get a good 20-minute ramp up, it's sort of training the device that, hey, we're exercising, then I get everything I want for the next, you know, 5-6 hours. So that's the kind of stuff that excites me. More sensors, faster pacemaker learning algorithms.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you for your story. I have an interesting story. My mother had a heart surgery about 4 years ago, and working for a global engineering services and contract manufacturing company, my first question to her was, who do they use? And she said, what are you talking about, boy? I said, do they use Medtronic, Boston Scientific? She said, I don't know. I just went to sleep. I woke up, and now I can move. So, but I think they did use Medtronic, so I'm sorry. But my question was, Heidi, how do you see Google Analytics, big data intersecting with pharmacogenomics to accelerate that process? I used to work for a company called Baxter Scientific Products 30 years ago, and we were talking about pharmacogenomics, personalized medicine, and it's like, okay, where does that stand relative to technology, big data analytics, et cetera, et cetera?
Right. You know, like I was saying, we're finally at a place for those things to come together. Back then, I'm sure one of the big issues was how do we get big enough data sets to train the models to be able to even determine if what you've created can be validated. So now, the amount of data that needs to be collected and used is Google scale data. And that's why we're really excited as a company to be a part of this, and especially in healthcare and genomics and all that. It's like, we can bring you the compute, the storage, the network, the everything we've learned about how to do AI and machine learning. But we're going to be working with the companies, our partners, to do this specialization across what your industry is. But yeah, we're an infrastructure that is now all HIPAA compliant and with a flex layer for devices, FDA cleared. But we're here to be a resource to help all of you build the future.
We have one last question here.
A little bit more for Randy, I guess. How do you find more heroes like Heidi to kind of inspire that performance feedback loop where you can really bring your teams to get driven by the patient as opposed to maybe the sales team or the doctors?
Well, Heidi is 1 in a million, that's for sure.
I've been sending you my friends. Because actually, and some of it is, friends know friends. Other people like me have found me on the internet and through social networking and through Facebook, and then I'm able to help feed that.
Yep. I repeat, Heidi's still 1 in a million. But it is true that athletes have a unique drive in their life, and from a physical standpoint. So athletes are a true source of technology input to high-performance devices. And you just have to love the way Heidi talks about the quality of her heartbeat. Who else would think about the quality of a heartbeat? I don't. My heart's fine as far as I know. I don't think about the quality of my heartbeat. Elderly people don't think about the quality of their heartbeat like a high-performance athlete would. Think of the audience we have here. We probably have one or maybe more that are 100% pacemaker, 100% device dependent in the room. But if we went on our bicycles, I think Heidi would outrace 95% of us in the room. That's amazing. It's just really amazing. And Heidi's journey is not complete. You know, she wants the next best device, not when the battery runs out. She wants the next best device when it's available. She wants to perform at that next higher level. And her position at Google allows all of us that opportunity to really think big about change in healthcare, about how to use data, how to integrate data, more sensors. How many patients are asking for more sensors? You know, it's a unique opportunity for all of us.
Well, I want to thank both of you for a really inspiring story. This is a great chance for us to put forward the patient story. I know that every one of you puts the patient first in your work, and that's what makes this industry really, really special, and what excites me every day about what we do here. I want to give Heidi and Randy a big round of applause.
Thank you.
So we're going to have another networking break now until 3 o'clock, and we'll start with our afternoon programming. Thank you again.